So making Bitcoin easy. What is Bitcoin? We've talked about Bitcoin as a currency. Now we're going to talk about Bitcoin as a mint. Because remember, Bitcoin is 6 things: currency, a mint, a central bank, a wallet/bank account, a payment network, and the 6th thing is a history of all past transactions, or the blockchain. Again, just a reminder, feel free to pause at any time if you need to. If a concept, some of these are just completely new concepts. I know when I was studying or reading about the Federal Reserve, it was pretty tiring and exhausting. I had to think about these things. I had never learned any of these things. So that's totally fine. You should have supplemental guide materials that you can write notes in, ask questions about things, and you should get those questions answered later, or you think about them and you can put them in there as things kind of get fitted into place. Okay, a mint is defined as a place where money is coined, especially under state authority. And this is why some people call Bitcoin, or the mechanism that Satoshi uses within Bitcoin to create new Bitcoins, a mint. Satoshi doesn't call it a mint per se, because to him, a mint is run by people, which is true. He uses the analogy of miners mining for gold to issue the new currency. How after mining enough time in the ground or rocks, they strike gold, and their work is worth something because they've struck gold. And that analogy is used for getting new Bitcoin. And I'll talk more about that in more detail once we get there. But the people who support the Bitcoin network by donating their processing power to solve that puzzle, they work for the new Bitcoin. Every miner has a chance of being the one to get the newly minted Bitcoins, like the miner who strikes gold. They struck it rich. These miners' work, or their computers' work, is called the mining, and the gold are the Bitcoin. This is still the most popular analogy today, and these miners have become multi-billion dollar companies, enterprises. And it is a great analogy because it's how everyone refers to the process, which is fine. For this e-course for now, I'm going to talk about how the process of producing new Bitcoin specifically is a mint, at least right now, issuing those new coins. Or to satisfy you, Satoshi, an automated mint. Okay, so Bitcoin as a mint or an automated mint, what's the big deal? Why is this important? There's a couple big deals here. If Satoshi would have counterfeited the US dollars in some factory out of New Jersey, the Secret Service would have swooped in, because that's one of their job descriptions, by the way, helping with counterfeit money. And they would have impounded the currency. They would have thrown him in jail and lost the key. And we wouldn't have heard much about it because we don't want to encourage others to do the same, right? But that's not what happened. Satoshi didn't counterfeit an existing currency. He created his own new currency. And it's not physical. It's not in some factory. It's digital. It's online. It's from computer code. And lastly, nobody knows who the guy is or if he's even still alive, and we may never know who he is. So how do you catch him? How do you stop Bitcoin? And has Satoshi done anything wrong? What if he's not even a US resident? So did he break any laws? So that begs the question, it brings us to whether, is it legal to mint or create your own currency? Do you know? Is it legal in the United States to create a new currency? According to the US Code and Constitution, the law is clear. It's illegal. What's unclear is if creating a digital currency is illegal or not, because when the law and the codes were written, they were only referring to paper and metal currency. The internet hadn't existed yet. So Bitcoin is not metal or paper, clearly. It's digital, it's online. In the past, over the last couple hundred years, courts have ruled in favor of banks issuing new currency, but outside of them and the government, there's little wiggle room. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't other currencies out there, which when I looked this up, I was really kind of surprised, but there are several currencies that exist out there today. But these fringe currencies that are out there, their supply is minimal, their usage is minuscule, and their area of influence is really tiny. It's localized. But then there's stories like Liberty Reserve. Have you heard of that? Or e-gold, where people made new currencies that exploded in popularity, but they were shut down because they didn't police their customers well enough, and they didn't file the right money transmitter licenses. and other things. At this point, Bitcoin has either gotten too big to shut down, or the powers that be don't realize how much of a threat it is to them, or the US government has decided to allow Bitcoin to proceed as long as its rails in and out of the cryptocurrency via exchanges like Coinbase are so heavily regulated, and they have to police their customers. Now, in the case of Coinbase specifically, they do this well enough to stay in business by following a couple very important guidelines. The first is called AML, or anti-money laundering rules. And then the other is called KYC, Know Your Customer rules, or KYC for short. Coinbase recently went public a couple months ago, and their valuation was $85 billion. That's a lot for a fringe currency that not many people are paying attention to. But Bitcoin's mint has succeeded, and it just continues to chug along, whereas Liberty Reserve and eGold failed because in their case, their owners were public and they tried to make businesses out of it, which there's nothing wrong with. But their currencies got too much attention, and they were saddled with too much regulatory and legal hurdles that they couldn't possibly meet. Satoshi, what did he do? He created Bitcoin, amazing, and he was anonymous, and he stayed anonymous. He didn't use a company to release it. And to our knowledge, he hasn't spent his Bitcoin either. By staying away and giving Bitcoin the code away for free, he can avoid the fate of Liberty Reserve and eGold. Whether he knew this was going to happen or not, I don't know. I can't say for certain. But either way, it's probably best that he do stay away, just because of how things have fared for those who've tried this thing before. What's unfortunate is that it's estimated he's in possession of 1 million Bitcoin, which at today's prices, I think is about $35 billion. Billion. The brilliance of Satoshi's mint is that it works. It's continued to work the whole time. New Bitcoin continue to be released every 10 minutes. It's never failed. Bitcoin is open source software like Linux, as opposed to closed source software like Microsoft. And I'll talk more about the difference of those in a future video. But like any good code running on hardware, it just does what it's told to do, and it keeps going. The rules don't change. It doesn't do anything more or anything less. It just follows the script. The benefit of this is that the mint is not run by humans, which was Satoshi's big concern and should be ours as well. We as humans are susceptible to fraud and corruption and mistakes. Computers, not so much, at least not now. Additionally, the rules don't change. The same can be said about the US government, where the US Mint, in concert with the US Treasury, Department of Treasury, and the Fed, issues more US dollars when it best suits their needs. I mean, our needs, the economy's needs. Throw in the Congress and an increasingly centralized and powerful US government, and what do you think is going to happen? Not only mistakes or inefficiencies or errors, but just things go wrong. Satoshi bypassed all of that by automating the entire minting process. This is truly amazing that he did it, that it works, and that no one can stop him or Bitcoin. You're going to hear me repeat that. Nobody can stop Bitcoin. So we've covered the first two now, okay? What is Bitcoin? Bitcoin as a currency, now Bitcoin as a mint. So hopefully you are learning a ton. Probably is a lot of information, I get that. The next section we're going to cover is Bitcoin as a central bank. So buckle up, let's keep going, and thanks for being with me.